Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga Arlong Park Arc, Episode 34, Reunited. Usopp tells Nami's true story. The episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins where the last one left off, with Johnny telling everybody what he saw Nami do to Usopp. Of course, Luffy doesn't believe this, and they argue about it. Ultimately, Johnny and Yosaku say that there's no more reason for them to be on the island, and they decide to leave, leaving the rest of the group there to plan their next moves. Meanwhile, we also have a Navy ship arriving that was called there by the survivors of Goza Village when it was destroyed. However, it is quickly dealt with by Arlong and his crew, who use Nami's sea charts to change the currents and create a whirlpool after pulling off the rudder, which basically leaves them destroyed. Upon returning home, Nojiko then hears a bunch of crashing and banging noises. Nami had gone to confront the rest of the crew, trying to get them to leave. They refused to leave, so she returned home and started breaking things in her anger, and starts to tell Nojiko about the people that she met and the time that they spent together. And Nojiko, after Nami falls asleep, realizes that it's going to be difficult for Nami because people actually showed up for her, which is not something that she's used to, and having friends is a painful thing for Nami to have. So she decides to go find the crew. While that's happening, Usopp arrives and reveals the truth that Nami had faked his death and had actually stabbed her own hand to make it look like there was blood and she had stabbed him, and then pushed him into the water, and that allowed him to be able to escape, saving his life. But obviously Johnny wasn't lying because she had made it look like she killed him. Shortly afterwards, Nojiko arrives, and she offers to basically tell them the story of Nami's past in order to get them to leave. However, Luffy flat out refuses to listen, and he goes off to take a walk. Zoro says he'll listen, but then promptly falls asleep, leaving it to Usopp and Sanji to actually pay attention to the story. And Nojiko begins by talking about Belmare and teasing her introduction. And then we see at the very, very end of the episode another Navy ship arriving at Kokoyashi Village, this one led by Nezumi, who we know is in Arlong's pocket, and he asks to be taken to Nami's house. So now that we've been reminded what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we'll rank on our mostly objective ranking list, which is void emotion, but bias and judgment can still apply, followed by the personal ranking, which is the emotional ranking. So on our single arc supporting, on our mostly objective rank values, first we have our single arc supporting character growth, which is revealing Chu's attack, which is his water gun. Because he has a long stretched out mouth, he puts water in his mouth and then he can spit it out, and it comes out with such high pressure that it can act like a bullet. And then we have our multi-arc main character development worth 4 points, which is of course Usopp revealing that he lives and that Nami faked his death in order to save his life. Also, we have the development of Nami having created sea charts for Arlong and his crew, and ultimately that leads to a score of 5 out of 10 for our mostly objective ranking list. So our arc rankings so far in the mostly objective ranking: in first we have the most wicked man of East Blue, Fishman Pirate Arlong. Usopp's death, Luffy, yet to land. The Witch of Kokoyashi Village, Arlong's female officer, and then this episode came in fourth. Reunited, Usopp tells Nami's true story. So for my personal ranking, I liked this episode. I felt that there was a healthy balance of comedy and information being given. The information, like, well, not necessarily information, it was more like a show rather than a tell, which helped because exposition can get boring. In this case, they were able to show it, but one of the things that it showed, of course, was how the fishmen fight, especially underwater, how Nami is vital to them. It plants seeds and hints for future plot points with, everybody being like, you can't give Nami up. We need her sea charts. They make us so powerful in these seas. And that, plotting beginning to, but Arlong's like, oh, well, I made a promise. I'm not going to do that. But then we have Nezumi show up there. So as rewatchers, we know where it's going, but even if it was your first time watching, you can start to get hints of where it's going. There was the earlier Marines who came who actually wanted to help, who ended up being no match, and that also leads to Nojiko and some of the other villagers realizing like there's no hope, we're never going to be free of Arlong, the only person we can rely on is Nami and her outcome, which is why she's trying to get the crew to leave on Nami's behalf after Nami fails to. I also feel like I mentioned the comedy. Some of the comedy was like when Usopp arrives, he comes running just as Sanji and Zara are having their first fight, which will become a regular pattern for them, and they each go to attack each other, and just as Usopp's coming between them, so he ends up basically squashed. And then Luffy wakes up and panics and goes, oh my gosh, did Nami do this to you? And then it's like, nope, actually that was us. But Usopp's fine ultimately and can reveal his story. I'll be honest, I don't really get why Nami would want them to leave. Like, she's seen that they're very strong. I don't know why she doesn't want to use them to fight, but she chooses not to. And ultimately, I felt like this episode was entertaining with some of the comedic value, but it also was planting the seeds to a lot of the future storylines and information that we're going to be getting in future episodes. But it, in and of itself, wasn't necessarily the best episode of the arc, and that's why I gave it a 7 out of 10. In fact, I'm even struggling to come up with things to say about it because it was planting seeds, but none of those seeds have come to fruition. And while I'm not against spoilers, I also feel like I'll talk about the things that are being planted when they come to fruition in the future episodes, so it's not worth talking about them here. Anyways, arc ranking so far, we gave it a 7. That leaves our list: the most wicked man of East Blue, Fishman Pirate Arlong in first, Usopp's death, Luffy yet to land, and then reunited, Usopp tells Nami's true story, which is episode 3, this one, and then the Witch of Kokoyashi Village, Arlong's female officer, is in fourth. Also just recalled, side note, Yosaku and Johnny just kind of dipping out after everything. Don't really have an opinion on it because on the one hand, they're not part of the crew, they're not obligated to stay. On the other hand, you've come that far, why not just stick around? So I end up in neutral because I can see the positive and the negative side of it. That brings us now to the saga ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, the current rankings are first place Romance Dawn arc, second place Orangetown arc, third place Baretti arc, and fourth place Syrup Village arc. Arlong Park so far has a score of 30 out of 150. On our personal ranking side, we have Orangetown arc in first, Romance Dawn arc second, third Baretti arc, fourth Syrup Village arc, and then Arlong Park currently has 29 out of 150. Then on our series ranking, this only changes after we complete an arc, so it remains 25 out of 80 on our mostly objective and 14 out of 80 on the personal ranking. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Arlong Park arc, episode 34, Reunited, Usopp tells Nami's true story. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.